Hey everyone, and welcome to the Perfect Bite podcast, your fusion of food and entrepreneurship. You'll hear stories from chefs, restaurateurs, CPG brands, and more from the food and bev industry. All of them are at different points in their journeys, talking about their experiences and how they've cooked up something new. Let's dig in. Welcome back to the Perfect Bite podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Perkins. I've been lucky enough to get to know today's guest over the last few years through our shared passion of working with the Trotter Project. She lives what seems like a dream life plucked out of a Nancy Meyers film, splitting her time between Monterey and her winery in the heart of the Willamette Valley in Oregon. But don't be fooled. Her hard work and determination are what have brought her here today and why her winery is recognized as one of the top 50 in the world. Her wines are grown biodynamically, and she herself is as dynamic as they come. Please welcome today's guest, Managing Director of Brooks Wine, Janie Brooks Heuck. Hi, Janie.
Hi, Sarah.
I am so happy to see you. I haven't seen you for a year or so in person.
Since the party.
Since our big old party, 10th anniversary of Trotter Project last year. We had such a beautiful time at Brooks Winery. And yeah, it's starting to heat up in Columbus, Ohio. So I think I should just get myself out there. Trade.
Yeah, it's just starting to get warm. It's going to be a lovely summer, I think.
It's always beautiful out at Brooks. Thank you again so much for hopping on here today and sharing your amazing story about how you got here today and how Brooks got here today. Let's take it back a little bit. I always like to start at the beginning. How did you first fall in love with food and wine? What were some of those favorite foods as a kid that you had?
Oh, my goodness. I enjoy this question because it does take you back, right? Peppermint ice cream and chocolate sauce for definitely was my favorite dessert.
Oh,
We
yeah.
still the country club my great-grandparents founded. A good favorite. Stroganoff, noodles and cheese.
Wow.
Veal parmesan. My mom was a really good cook, so that's what it's bringing back mostly to me is those memories of what mom would make for dinner.
My goodness. I was going to say, I never had veal parmesan as a kid.
And we ate the same things very often.
Gotcha. I can relate to that. And I imagine as moms too, that's just one of the easiest things to do is go to the favorites everyone will like.
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit more about your journey from there. Where did you grow up and where did you end up going in terms of starting your career? Because you didn't go into the wine industry right away.
No, we were born and raised in Portland, Oregon. And when I graduated from high school, I ended up going to Arizona State University in Tempe and majored in accounting while I was there and took a job right after graduation with Pete Marwick of KPMG, who was one of the big 8 firms at that time in accounting, and did that for about 6 months until I fell in love with my boss at KPMG, and therefore I couldn't stay in the audit department anymore. So I moved into healthcare consulting, did a lot of merger and acquisition work. It was that kind of at the beginning of managed care in the early 90s, and a lot of acquisitions in hospitals, buying physician groups and consolidation across physician groups, a lot of vertically integrated companies. So I did a lot of work there. Ended up going to work for the state Medicaid program, which is the first managed care program in the country in Arizona. And then I worked with a woman who founded a program that still exists today called Silver Sneakers. It's a Medicare benefit of fitness for Medicare eligibles. So we were kind of the in-between company. It was a startup where we would go secure a network of health clubs and train them on how to work with people 65 and older. And then the HMOs would offer memberships, basically fitness memberships and classes to their Medicare eligibles. So that was a super, super fun career. And I only left it because my husband took a job in California. So we moved from Arizona to California in 99.
Oh my goodness. I mean, so the man you fell in love with at KPMG, This was your husband?
Yes. Yeah.
It makes sense to meet someone through work sometimes. You know exactly what each other is going through. You have some similar interests. And I love,
We spend a lot of time together.
yes. Yeah, you really get to know someone. And I love that you had really some startup experience too with Silver Sneakers. That just sounds like such a great idea. And again, if you want to extend your life, if you want to be healthy, you got to move.
Yeah. Yeah. It was perfect for health clubs because they didn't have business between 10 and 2, which is when the seniors would go. And Kaiser Permanente actually did claims cost studies with us, and we showed how much money they saved in medical claims because these people not only got physically better, but socially. They had an
Yes.
outlet and made new friends. We had people get married. Like it was really pretty awesome.
Yeah. And that's another thing they say too. If you want to live to be a centenarian, if there isn't, say, genetic disease that comes into play, being social is really important.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're out in gorgeous California. Is that when you moved to Monterey?
Yes.
Oh gosh, that is truly one of my dream places to live. I'm obsessed with the water and just the culture out there. It's just so beautiful and a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah. We honeymooned here in 1990. So felt very fortunate when my husband got offered a job in the place where we spent our honeymoon. So it was a no-brainer to walk away from what I was doing and move here and be a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah. And it was a lot of fate in a lot of ways coming into play.
Absolutely.
Now, let's talk a little bit about a different change in the road that happened, unfortunately, after your brother passed away. So, your brother Jimmy is the founder of Brooks Wine in the Willamette Valley in Oregon. Tell us a little bit about that time post his passing and really what led you to get involved and say, hey, I'm going to help lead the charge and keep his legacy going here.
Yeah, I didn't know that much about wine, and I definitely didn't know much about what he was doing when he passed away. But literally, the night that he passed away, I was in his home, and it was filled with all of his friends. And a group of winemakers sat me down, and they explained to me that harvest was 2 weeks away. And they had figured out that day who Jimmy was going to be buying fruit from and wanted to make sure that all those farmers' contracts were honored. That was kind of their number one priority. So they had all figured out who was going to take what fruit, and they offered to make the wine for free that year. And so that I wouldn't have to worry about it and just give me some time to figure out, focus on his son and all of his personal stuff. And so I did that. And I was very surprised that these people were so generous and so kind, and actually thought for sure they were trying to steal like my brother's winemaking secrets at the time, because I had not been in a career that was maybe that supportive and generous and honest and authentic. And then I really realized what an art winemaking is. I took a class right away at UC Davis to try to understand the vocabulary and I mean, I didn't even know what viticulture and enology meant at the time I took the class, but just the appreciation for farming and the fact that there are hundreds of decisions made in the vineyard and there are hundreds of decisions made in the winery, and that each decision can actually really affect the final product. And so every winemaker in their own right is more of an artist than they are a manufacturer of something. So that I thought was really interesting too. But I was most struck by the support and how loved my brother was. When you look at the 12 winemakers that helped us that year, it was an all-star cast of people, just some of the most important people in his generation, which was kind of the second generation, second wave of winemakers in the valley. And I talked to all of his distributors, said, why would I keep doing this? What was special about what he was doing? And he did have some very special things that other people weren't focused on. And I know we're going to hopefully talk about him a little bit more, but one of them was biodynamic farming. He also was extremely passionate about restoring the reputation of Riesling in Oregon, and also a big believer in blending. So producing every wine in just a small amount so that when you get to go to bottling, you can actually blend these different components to get to style and whatever you want to consider balance without having to manipulate the wine. So his commitment to purity both in the farming as well as in the winemaking, was something that I was struck by. And really just the people. Like I just had never been in an industry full of people who were just so genuine, and they really were there for me. One of those winemakers made wine for us for 5 years without charging us. They still, some of them are my dearest friends today, and that's been 20 years. So love it. I kind of feel like it was a little knock on my shoulder and, hey, little sister, I think you need to be really passionate about how you spend your time if you're going to work this hard. I feel like it was a gift in a lot of ways that I was introduced to the wine industry through a tragedy that happened.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, you were introduced to this level of art. It's really cool blending of science and art that makes gorgeous wines. And what an incredible story that these folks said. We know that you all are going through a hard time. In the moment, they just said, we're going to bond together and we're going to keep this going in his honor and help out that way. That's really incredible. That's very moving.
And it's definitely just an intrinsic part of the Oregon wine community in the Willamette Valley. I mean, it still exists today considerably. It's really, even with some outside people coming in and people from other countries and other states and joining the community, it's still very collegial and supportive of each other.
That's so nice to hear because, like you said, you were coming from an area that might be a little bit more cutthroat. It's about the bottom line and nothing else in a lot of ways.
Most of wine does not operate based on the bottom line, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah, it is really difficult. Really, really difficult.
So what were some of those things that you loved learning in those early days? Again, we're talking just over 20 years ago that you were brought to the helm. In addition to your classes at UC Davis, what were you doing to help yourself get fully integrated into the industry, how your brother was doing things, and just get to know what was going on with everyone a little bit better?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of conversation, but I think one of the things that really struck me was farming and how it's so easy to go to the grocery store and buy whatever produce you want, regardless of where it comes from. Prior to this, I wanted cherries in November. I'd go buy cherries in November, like not even thinking about how they were farmed, where they came from, what that carbon footprint looks like, whether or not they used chemicals in growing those crops. And so the appreciation for the work that goes into farming and how challenging that is to produce a quality crop. And again, financially, it's very difficult, and you're dealing with Mother Nature that you have very little control over. It really gave me a new appreciation for honestly walking into a produce section at a grocery store. And now I do the best that I can to only buy local and to only buy things that I think are farm appropriately and to support farmers markets and that type of thing. So I think from a general standpoint, I think that side of farming was really important. I didn't realize how competitive wine was. I think that there is a lot of passion in the production for sure. Well, I'd like to say there's passion in the sales side. Selling wine is hard. Like, I don't think there's that many people that get into the business and say, I want to sell wine for a living. There is a lot of perceived glamour, and it is an amazing industry. You go into a market, tough day, had to, show wine all day and taste wine all day. But really, at the end of the day, it is a commodity product on a large scale in terms of just the sheer volume. There's wineries in California that alone make more winery events produced in the whole entire state of Oregon. I mean, Oregon's only 2.4% of the production in the nation of wine. That's not very much shelf space like that. You're in not that many glass pours, and that's just the domestic market, not even considering the international market as well.
Yeah, I think that's such an important lesson for any type of business, especially consumer brands, is what is your differentiator, especially when you're not the first and only to a type of market. I do want to talk about what makes Oregon and Willamette Valley wine so special, and then go into why Brooks wine is so special, because I think the concept of biodynamic farming is so cool. And again, we're entering even more of a time where, like you said, we're all caring a little bit more about where things are coming from, how it's done. And it makes a total difference, not just from taste, but even just how you feel when you drink it.
Yeah, people talk about sulfites in wine all the time. What
Yes.
gives you a headache is the chemical compounds that people add to that. It really isn't about the sulfites. Like Oregon, so one of the special things about Oregon, you have the strictest labeling laws in the United States. So the federal law for varietal, so if something says Pinot Noir, it only has to be 75% Pinot Noir. In Oregon, it's 90. So we have the tightest labeling laws of any wine region in the country, which I think is very important and shows that there is a lot of authenticity happening in Oregon. We also can't add like mega purple and other things that you can add to wines in California. So that's one thing. But then, obviously our climate and our soils are what actually make our wines so special. A lot of people don't realize the Willamette Valley, there's very little grapevines on the valley floor. That is a very, very fertile soil that you can grow a lot of grape agriculture. And we do. We grow a lot of grass seed and Christmas trees and orchards and berries and hops and a lot of things, but not grapes. In order to be called a Willamette Valley wine, your vineyard has to be at least 200 feet in elevation. So the hills are covered in vineyards in Oregon, and the valley floor is not. So it is just a wonderful growing region. It is a cooler climate. It doesn't get as warm. We do have warm summers, but we have a lot of daylight, longer days in the summer, and sunshine just in general, not just the heat, but the photosynthesis and a lot of the other things that sun helps with growth of the plant. We have longer days in Oregon during that prime growing season, during the summer season. So that helps for sure. Rainfall, most of the vineyards in Oregon are dry farmed, and that's because we get about 40 inches of rain, and most of that rain comes from October through May. And that is enough rainfall for the plants to have enough water stored throughout the growing season. You just get a different quality of fruit and complexity from being dry farmed as well. And then where we are in the Willamette Valley and the Yosemite Hills is also a special place from a geographical standpoint because we have, and I'm sure you felt it when you were there, it can get really windy in the afternoons where we are at in the valley because we are adjacent to a break in the coastal mountain range. So the winds that come in off the Pacific Ocean come right into the Yosemite Hills where we are and then push off and cool the valley. And one of the things that does, it helps really a lot for acid retention, but by cooling down the grapes in the afternoon, it extends the amount of time they need to hang on the vine to ripen. And that's really where you get your flavor profiles developed is how long your fruit can stay on the vine. So we'll start picking end of September, where a lot of wineries in California might be done picking by the end of August. And even within the valley, like we might start picking 3 weeks after somebody that's 25 miles away because they're in a hotter area of the Willamette Valley and they just don't get the benefits from those winds. So where you are in the Willamette matters too. There's a lot of different microclimates that are really special in terms of being able to grow fruit.
And that is so interesting. I learned a lot just a few minutes right there of, again, I've visited wineries, I've tasted, but it's like you said, difficult to understand that complexity of art plus science. And now you've been doing it for over 2 decades. So it's just back of hand for you.
Well, what about that? I've never actually made the wine. But I taste test.
I mean, that's important. Everyone needs to have a taste tester.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit more about what vision your brother Jimmy started with and how it's continued today, what you've committed to it. And tell us a little bit more about what is biodynamic farming? How can we taste a difference in these wines?
From the beginning, the decision to continue the winery was really just to prolong the legacy of what he built and not really modify or change it to be something other than that. So we've been really true to his founding philosophies and principles. So biodynamic farming, which I'll explain more in a second, but still how we farm our estate vineyard. Riesling was the primary white varietal that my brother wanted to restore. And so Riesling is our primary white. We make 14 to 17 different Rieslings a year. And when I mentioned that Oregon's 2.4% of production in the country, within Oregon, Riesling's less than 3% of what's bred. So it's definitely kind of a hyper-focused little niche that we've carved out in the Valley. Blending, I mentioned too. So my brother was using his largest fermentation vessel was 2.5 ton fermenters, and he was making 2,500 cases. That's the largest size of vessel we still have, but we make about 16,000 cases. So we haven't compromised the approach to winemaking at all. And it's not the easy way to make wine for sure. It is a ton of work, and that's a huge footprint of fermenters, and it's a lot of different tanks to manage. But that's also the variety that we have, right? We work with over 20 different vineyards, and we have different clones, and how high a vineyard is matters, what aspect it faces matters, how long ago it was planted matters. And we keep all those pieces separately, just like my brother did. So most of it in the logo was my brother's. That was a tattoo. It's called an Ouroboros. And he created the label based on a tattoo that he had that symbolizes the circle of life. And that's so much to him. Sure, we made it some different colors, but we really have, again, kept his spirit. Obviously, the name, Brooks is my maiden name, but that was his last name. He has a son who was 8 years old when he passed away and is now 28. And we just got the news that he is going to go to viticulture and enology school in France, where he's been living since 2019. And then he's going to return to Oregon. So his goal is to take over managing and the farming of our vineyards. So,
Thank goodness.
yeah, we're excited about that. Biodynamics was something of a huge learning curve too. My elevator pitch for it, the way I like to explain it, is that it's everything that's wonderful about organic. So you're not using, harmful chemicals or anything to manage the farm. But then there's additional things that we do that really help to focus in on the nutrition of both the soil and the plant, and then the resulting flavor profile of the fruit. And they're called preparations, and there's 9 of them, and they range from everything from making like a fertilizer out of cow manure to making a tea out of chamomile. And so we'll use those 9 preparations either on the soil, on the plant, or in our compost pile that we then spread in the vineyard soil. And by taking care of the nutrition in the soil and in the plant, you're obviously then taking care of what the plant produces and how it produces. Our vines are in great shape. We have some of the oldest vines in the Willamette Valley, and I know some of it's because they've been farmed so cleanly and so well for so long, because we started this farming method my brother did back in 2002. So for over 23 years, we've been biodynamically farming our estate vineyard. And there's just purity. There's a purity to the fruit that I think is unmatched because of that style of farming. And then also we are very low intervention. Our whole goal is we want that fruit to shine through at the wines. And so how we work with that fruit throughout our winemaking process is also very gentle, so that the fruit can be what's expressed in the bottle.
Yeah. And it's almost like you're doing the most craft version that you could get in terms of farming and in terms of that winemaking process. And it really does result in an incredible wine. I want to talk about Riesling a little bit more, because I love the Brooks Riesling and say other Rieslings. Maybe you can tell me like what is similar or dissimilar between this. Is say German Riesling is also very nice. But, say in the last 10 years, if you said Riesling to me, I'd say, oof, sweet, too much, don't want that.
I know. Well,
yeah. How are you rebranding the Riesling?
Well, it's interesting because I didn't realize when I took over that everybody wasn't making Riesling. That's what everybody did. And then I slowly realized, no, it was just us. And there were moments, and I'm like, why? And I went to this event called the Riesling Rendezvous in 2007. And it was a couple of days of tasting 30 wines side by side, blind. And it was all Riesling. And we really just got a very good appreciation for how it can be made, and everything from dry to sweet styles, how it can age really beautifully, how you can take 5 dry examples, and because it's, volcanic soil versus marine sedimentary soil versus the slate that they have over in Germany, how that impacts the flavor and fruit profile of the wine too. And People ask your aha moment in wine. That was really mine, was just really understanding and appreciating what Riesling can do. It is a constant sell. I don't think for the younger generation, I think right now, actually, they think it's super cool because it does have a stigma from older generation of being plainly sweet. And I don't know the history of why we got sent so much plainly sweet Riesling in this country for as long as we did and why everybody drank it. But there's nothing wrong with sweet Riesling. There's nothing wrong with sugar and Riesling as long as you have really good acid. And that's one of the things that, Oregon in general is just a very, very high acid area to be making wine. And Riesling is definitely a varietal that it suits very well. And so Riesling is extremely pairable with food. We make every style of Riesling. We make traditional methods, sparkling Riesling, all the way to dessert wines. Most of them are dry in style. And some of that has to do with just the climate in Oregon. It really presents itself well for us to get the fruit just ripe enough to make a dry Riesling in style. So that it is one person at a time, but it is definitely where we've kind of carved our niche as a winery in the country. I mean, I think most places who know who Brooks is across the country, Riesling would be the first thing that comes out of their mouth.
Oh, that is so exciting to just hear that you've got this niche and it's known in a great way. Like you said, it's not that cloyingly sweet Riesling that everyone's been used to. It is so nice and fresh and just, yeah, it tastes just like it should in a lot of ways. So you've been talking about the national market, but in the last few years, you've been named one of the top 50 wineries in the entire world. What was that moment like for you all? What has that era been like since? How are you focusing then on growth, having this type of accolade?
Well, that's interesting because I didn't know at first that we got nominated for that accolade. And we were actually invited to go to the awards in Spain. And like I said, I did not know about this communication issue within the company. So when it happened and when it was announced, I started getting texts. My phone was blowing up and someone took a picture of when our winery was announced. And again, I didn't even know what it was, but come to find out. So it's the world's best vineyards and there are leads, if you will, for each wine producing country in the world. And then those leads have influencers, whether they're media, whether they write for publication, or they have their own Substack blog or whatever they're doing, who vote on wineries within their country that they think have the best overall experience. So it's not just the wines, but it's the hospitality. It's the whole package, basically. So we were really honored. I think that first year we were one of 3, maybe, in the United States that were picked out of the 100. And I think there were 6 last year out of the country in the top 100. So hopefully we'll make the list again. But you just don't know either because you don't know who the people are that are voting. But I love that. I love that it's that objective because often wine reviews are not that objective.
Right. It's so subjective to your own personal taste.
Yeah. And it's fun. We're doing a little program with one of the wineries that was also top 50, and they're based in Texas. Believe it or not, people don't think a lot about Texas wine, but we've been collaborating for the charities that we support, putting together a package about, go visit the top 50 wineries or the top wineries in America that were on that top 50 list.
That is so cool. Let's talk about those efforts a little bit more. So, on top of everything, Brooks Wine is not only farming as cleanly as you can and just being so focused on that, but you also are all a B Corp, which is really interesting. Again, this is a tough business. The margins are slim, and yet you're still finding a way to give back to others. So tell us about how that plays into the business model today and what type of other nonprofits you're working with.
Yeah, I think that in this day and age, there's so much greenwashing, right? People use the word sustainable, even biodynamics going to get there, and now regenerative agriculture, and nobody really knows what any of it mean. And so I always just really believed in getting certified. I think we need to support the organizations that are doing the hard work to be able to certify people who are doing the right thing. B Corp is definitely a very rigorous certification, primarily not just the certification itself, but it also changes over time. It changes with the time. So, like when we got certified in 2019 originally, there were not a lot of questions about DEI and women ownership or anything like that. The recertification in 2022, you bet there was, right? And now they've actually, we'll get recertified again in 2026, but they completely changed the standards. And I haven't dove in yet to see what it is, but what I've heard is that it's just more and more focused on supply chain, which, we're fortunate, I guess, because most of our product comes from within a very small mile radius around us because it's grapes. But it does look at, where are you buying your labels from? Where's your glass made? Which we've had domestic made glass for years, but it pushes you because you earn points on the certification for having the best lowest carbon footprint in a lot of different areas, and things like making us a better employer. So like we've added benefits or increased our 401k match because B Corp standards tell you should basically. And so if you can afford to, then you should. So it's a great all around tool for sure. And again, back to Oregon, we have more biodynamic certified vineyards and wineries and more certified B Corp wineries than anywhere in the world, any single region in the world. So Oregon is just also very smart-minded when it comes to doing what's right by people and the planet.
Yeah. What do you think it would take for other large wine regions, let's talk about California and beyond, to step up and try to meet Oregon's bar that it set?
I mean, that takes resources and it takes even our Demeter certification. That happens every year, right? That's 2 of like people's time, probably for a week each a year that they're doing that. And same thing with B Corp. It's 4 or 5 of us, and that's at least 80 hours each, at least. So I think it's time, and I think it's who you're trying to talk to. Like, I just also feel like I want to cast the widest net I can to find as many people who might relate to my product. And whether that's a retail buyer or a restaurant buyer or an end consumer. Do you love bees? Well, guess what? We also take care of bees. We get honey from our bees. We're part of the Oregon Bee Program. So we're, making our efforts to do what we need to do for the bees. Or is it B Corp? Or is it how we're farming? Or is it members 1% for the planet? We're in this really cool international think tank for wineries and vineyards called the Porto Protocol. And the only way you get into that is if you could bring forth a best practice that nobody else in the group is doing so that we learn from each other. So like our B Corp certification was what got us into that international group. So I just think for me, it's about sharing with the world that we are doing the right thing and in a language that I think you can't poke holes in it, right?
Yeah. It's something so hopeful to hear in a time of kind of a lot of chaos. And so I love hearing how collaborative you are with that group as well. And folks just focusing on doing good, and it will result in good business.
Yeah, it's been interesting being partners too. So within 1% for the planet, all of our resources have gone to a nonprofit called Kiss the Ground. And they really started, I think they started mostly based on individual donorship and, things like members of 1% for the planet. But now they're doing a lot of corporate stuff. And there's a lot of big corporations like Spindrift and Gaia and Anthropology that want to be known in that green space. And so they're partnering with companies like Kiss the Ground to help educate their teams. We're going to do our second presentation with them, another corporate retreat to talk about farming and why farming matters and why it's important about what goes into that end consumer product. Because these larger corporations, like from a sales standpoint, haven't been talking that way, right? They might have been doing it, but like, how do you talk about it? And how do you differentiate your product? And those are all very competitive sets, right? Supplements, sparkling water, flavored water, and clothing. I mean, those are very competitive consumer product areas as well. So they're partnering to differentiate themselves, which I think is awesome.
Definitely. And like you said, it's going the step beyond just putting a label on it and greenwashing. It's really educating about why this is important and why it's going to end up for the best. And again, not just to be trendy.
Yeah, I mean, you got to believe it, right? I mean, I think that's what's great about farming in a lot of ways right now. Nobody can look you straight in the eye and say it's healthy and good for us to be spraying some of those things on the food that we eat. It's just not. I mean, even people that do it, I don't think can say that anymore and look at you and agree that that's the right way to be farming. So hopefully more things will be coming like that, right? That's not the way you treat people. Do your part.
Yeah, it's not how we treat the planet. And, through this podcast, I've been so lucky to have guests like you where I and hopefully other listeners out there are learning just so much about how we have been fed kind of propaganda for years of, yeah, this is totally fine. And it is going to take a little bit, but I think we're all moving in that right direction of saying, let's go back to how things were done pre-war, essentially, before the chemical companies came in and had to find a way to figure out how to keep, their products getting bought and used places.
Well, and from a cost standpoint, I get it a little bit with farming, but if you really lay out what the differences are, we had a farmer who wanted me to pay him more money for his fruit. I said, well, only if you change to biodynamic farming. And he didn't know what that meant. And it basically was like, you know what? You don't make any more passes in your tractor. You just drag something else behind your tractor to get your weeds out from underneath your rows versus spraying something. And we'll do all your preparations. Like there really wasn't that huge of an investment outside of a tractor implement. But people don't get that. They don't understand that.
Yeah.
So there's so much education to be done because it doesn't take that much necessarily to make that change.
Yeah. And like you said, to be incentivized to make that change too, instead of just focusing on yield.
Yeah.
So another lovely nonprofit that you work with that we met through is the Trotter Project. And for folks who don't know, it's a nonprofit named after the late great chef Charlie Trotter, and we're focused on helping get scholarships into the hands of students who are going into culinary arts, hospitality, and agricultural sciences. So talk to us a little bit about how you got involved and why it's been so important for you to be a board member.
On a sentimental level, one of the reasons I was so excited to meet some folks from the Trotter Project was because my brother had one thing hanging on his kitchen wall when he passed away, and that was his frame signed menu for when he ate at Charlie Trotter's, which is really amazing. And I met Paula through Elizabeth Faulkner, actually, through the chef who we had done events with. And then she was coming up to Oregon to do an event that was gifted at one of the Trotter Project dinners, one of the fundraisers, which ironically, the person who bought it actually owns a vineyard that we buy fruit from in the Willamette Valley also.
Oh, small world.
We do the dinner at his house, and Elizabeth brought the Trotter folks trips. And I just sat down with Derek afterwards, and we had this really amazing talk and felt like what Charlie Trotter was trying to do was very similar in spirit to what my brother was trying to do. And bringing the wine component into the work that the Trotter Project does, not just the custom label, but, wine's about hospitality too.
Yes.
And an industry that it's harder and harder to recruit people on. It's a tough industry being in the restaurant world, the restaurant business world. And so my ultimate goal too is that the Trotter Project continues to expand to have wine programs as well.
That would be great. And as we've been talking about a lot of our chat here today, agricultural sciences, it's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Oh, and I just love the wine that we all created together about a year and a half ago. It was called Little Sister. And it was so special because it was you and Anne, and we paired up with Minit Chauhan, who's been on here as well for folks. And you're all little sisters. And like you said, your brothers both had really similar mentalities. They were just separated by a couple of states here.
Yeah. Yeah, that wine was really special to do together for sure. And Anne and I, we had that bonding, obviously, of losing our brothers, and it was very special.
Yeah, absolutely. So, speaking of the future and how we're going to keep pushing forward here, there are a lot of challenges going on here right now. I mean, you're dealing with a changing climate in some ways. There are interesting things happening with the industry, with policy that we're not sure what's going on right now. How are you taking on these challenges as a team and individually? How are you feeling?
I always find these times you got to find the opportunity, right? You got to find the reasons to rise above and kind of keep your head down and focus on the hard work. From a farming standpoint, Oregon's always been a challenging place to farm. So the issues that we are having climate wise, I feel like we're very prepared for. We've been able in the last 5 years, we've had heat domes and freezes in May. And like we've had these extreme events that we've never had before, but at the end, we're harvesting amazing fruit and still making wonderful wine. So I feel like we've kind of got the farming piece in. We did just hear this week, very specific to Oregon, that the two largest vineyard management companies are one's buying the other. So we're not really sure what that's going to mean. Corporate and gaining efficiencies can be good. It's a hard industry to make a buck in to farm for sure. So that's interesting. Just yesterday in California, one of the largest distributors in the country said they're pulling out of California in September. So that's really interesting and leaving a lot of brands high and dry in one of the biggest marketplaces in the country. So there's a lot going on. So what are we doing? So we are continuing to find reasons to bring people to Brooks. So we just launched this awesome program called Artisans in Residence, where we are partnering with like-minded companies throughout Oregon and highlighting their products at our winery for a series of 3 months and then doing a pop-up with them. So we've already had a candle maker. This month, June, is a beer producer. So we're actually doing a custom canned beer with them. But we have 12 of them lined up throughout the year. So again, finding community partnerships that hopefully expand their exposure to our customers and vice versa to their customers. Another very cool thing that's happening. But we have created, so if you think about golf clubs and yacht clubs and ski clubs, they have reciprocal benefits in other locations. We've put together a group of like-minded wineries that are sustainable and innovators in their home AVAs, and we're putting a network together where any of our wine club members will be treated club members at their locations. And I love
Wow.
your mouth is like wide open. It's awesome. Yeah. So we have 8 to start. There will be no repeating in AVAs. So like I will build only Willamette Valley Winery. And then our plan is that we grow that for e-commerce and then we also grow it geographically. So we'll have a winery in Ohio, in Colorado, and Michigan, because the idea kind of came from how do I get better benefits to my out-of-state wine club members? And we're like, oh, well, wouldn't it be cool if they had a local winery they could go to and be treated like a member?
I'm obsessed, Janie. This is incredible.
So it's not getting announced till July 1st, but so hopefully the world will know by the time you hear this podcast. It's going to be called
The Wine
Atlas Collective.
Amazing.
We have a logo, we have a mission. It is a really cool group of wineries that I've picked to be a part of it. And just at a time where there's like a lot of corporate consolidation and a lot of people not staying afloat, it just made sense to bring together the stars of these individual AVAs that care so much about their farming and their winemaking and their consumer base and providing more benefit. And I think it's going to be really awesome.
Yes. Congratulations. And thank you for doing that. You are supporting local even beyond Oregon, which I appreciate so much. You said a couple of folks in the Midwest, and it's kind of a tough time for travel and things are really expensive. So if you could say, I can go support someone local and it's the same benefits as well as the same mission behind all of them, count me in 100%.
Yeah. Well, and then part of what we want to do is because I think we'll have 35,000 Wine Club members across these 8 wineries is, go to a glassware company and negotiate great discounts. Go to all different wine pieces and then offer that to all of our members so that everybody can participate and take advantage of, good pricing, because we've come together as a group that are independent and family owned wineries.
I can't wait to see what Wine Atlas Group does.
I know, it's going to be so exciting.
Oh, this is such a good thing for the future. And is there anything else this summer we can look forward to with Brooks, or any other things you want to tease? You were teasing something to me the other month.
I was. I don't have my act together quite yet, but I'm going to. So we're going to be launching a podcast probably in September, and it's going to be called Peace, Bread, Land, Wine, which that was 4 words that my brother had on the back of his t-shirt. But we kind of use it as our home motto. And everything we do falls into those 4 categories. And so I will have a guest that falls into each of those categories each week. So I'm excited about that because, we did a program called Beyond Brooks during COVID, where similar to what we've done with the artisan in residence, but we would bring in Elizabeth Faulkner or different people and talk about their product and how they're made and their belief systems. And so educational and so fun to find the parallels in sourcing and in production and in marketing with so many other types of products. So it'll be that kind of mindset, really to satisfy my craving for continued education and learning, like I'm sure you gain from doing this as well. I'm definitely going to call you to have you on my podcast.
You're so sweet. Oh my gosh. Maybe I'll be in the bread category because I just love bread, but
food. That's about food.
The food category. Yes.
Yeah, for a fight. That would make sense.
Yes. Oh, thank you.
Community. So,
yeah, absolutely. And there's something so special about starting a podcast that even when you're in your kitchen alone, you just feel so connected to people. And again, like you said, you get to learn so much. Yeah. I know that I've learned so much today. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. It's been fun.
Mm-hmm. So let's do a couple fun questions before we get to the world's best and hardest question. And in your case, we're going to make it a 2-parter for you. So something a little bit more on the light side here. We are in gorgeous summertime as we're releasing this. What are some of your favorite sips for summer and what you like to pair with when you're at the winery?
I mean, my favorite go-to sip during the summer is rosé. I love rosé. And I love our rosé. Our rosé has just a lot of structure and a lot of texture. So it's a little chewier than the easy drinking type of rosé. So it also is a really good food wine. I love to pair that with tuna, any kind of tuna, or it's sashimi or any kind of seared tuna is definitely one of my favorite bites. But, we make a lot of aromatic crisp dry whites too. Besides our Rieslings, we do a Pinot Blanc. We do our Amicus White Blend, which is a really fun porch pounder, as they call it in the South.
I don't think I've ever heard that, but
yeah,
I like that. I like that. A good throwback. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and that meal too sounds so perfect for just a gorgeous time in the Northwest and near the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
And what is some advice you'd want to give anyone who's looking to start their own business, whether it's within wine, whether it's in food and bev, or anything else? What are some of the entrepreneurial tidbits that you've picked up along the way?
It's all about relationships and people. Yeah. I think that is, at the end of the day, there's a lot of good products out there. There's a lot of good ideas, but it's really about really good people that you want to invest your time in. Time is precious. So surrounding yourself with people definitely who are brighter than you and smarter than you and have different passions than you. There's just a lot to be learned and gained. But I think that's the number one reason why I do what I do is because the people I get to do it with.
Yeah, I agree. You can have all of the degrees in the world, but if you don't know how to work with other people and learn how to give, then it's tough to move forward.
And it's what's inspiring.
It's very true. It is. Well, I've been inspired by you today. And now we get to do our last question. So, this podcast is called The Perfect Bite, not only because it's a bit of a perfect bite of our food and bev supply chain out there, but because we all have our own perfect bite. We have our own unique taste buds and memories, the things that just really hit us and won't ever leave us. So, I'm going to ask you a two-part question. Given that you're in the wine industry, I'd love to hear, Janie, what is your perfect bite? And what is your perfect sip?
Can I put the two together?
Yes.
It's so funny because I don't know what it is, but I answer this question the same. I mean, I absolutely love a perfect medium rare herb trusted raffle wine. Like just my favorite delicacy special.
Yeah.
And it obviously pairs amazing with Pinot Noir, specifically at Brooks, I would say our Caille Pinot Noir. That just has a little bit more herbaceousness and fruit to it. I think it's a really good pairing. But yeah, I'm a raffle ham girl for sure.
Oh, I love that because I'm picturing you having it. I'm there too. And we're at the winery on that deck looking out at your vineyards, and just maybe there's a little fog, maybe there's a little bit of mist to add some intrigue and a little coolness. And oh, I want to be in Oregon right now. That was beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Janie, this has been wonderful. Can you let our listeners know how they can find and follow Brooks? So, the location of the winery, along with social accounts, website, and how they can sign up for this great wine club.
Yeah. So we are located in Amity, Oregon, which is in the center of the Willamette Valley. Our website is brookswinesingular.com. So brookswine.com. We're also primarily on Instagram as Brooks Winery, but also Facebook at Brooks Wines and LinkedIn as Brooks Winery. And then if you do go to our website, there is a button that says join, and that is where all of our wine club information is. And we do have the best benefits of any wine club in America. And I'm going to keep saying it until somebody can prove me wrong.
I'm not trying to.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, everyone go and sign up. And again, this is going to be so excited with the Wine Atlas Collective. Cannot wait for it.
Wow.
Janie, thank you again so much, everyone. Raise a glass and cheers to you all for tuning in. And everyone, this was Janie Brooks Heuck's Perfect Bite.
Thanks for tuning in to The Perfect Bite today. You can listen to future episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Thanks in advance for subscribing, rating, and reviewing. You can follow The Perfect Bite on social media at Perfect Bite Pod. Now go get something good to eat.